Okay, I would like to thank you for coming to join us for our latest virtual talk here at Rockland Public Library. I'm Shane, the Adult Program Coordinator. I hope you can hear me just fine. And I would like to introduce Kathrin, but first I would like to extend a big thanks to the Friends of Rockland Public Library for their support of our programming, both virtual and on-site throughout the year. We couldn't do it without our wonderful Friends group. And also thanks to our library director, Amy Levine, who got us situated with Zoom so quickly when we had to transition to virtual programming. It has definitely been a blessing and allowed us to keep our lecture series going all through this strange year. So thank you to the Friends and to Amy Levine. I would like to tell you about a couple of upcoming programs here at Rockland Public Library. Next Thursday, August 20th, we will be having an evening of music and conversation with Forget Forget. Forget Forget is a synth pop band based in Portland, Maine. And I'm thrilled to see that somebody else is joining us, so I'm going to let them in. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. And so next week, Forget Forget will be meeting on Zoom for an interview about their musical history and their creative process. They have pre-recorded an exclusive concert for us at Rockland Public Library. So they'll be playing some clips from that throughout our chat, and then we will debut that concert on our social media the following day. And in 2 weeks, we have a very exciting program, a recreation of a 10th century Viking dinner, crafting, and game night with our local branch of the Society for Creative Anachronism. And we are so looking forward to that. Both of those programs will be on Zoom, as will all of our programs for the foreseeable future. So if you're interested in attending those, please send me an email at sbillings@rocklandmaine.gov. So I am now going to introduce tonight's speaker, who is a wonderful, energetic, enthusiastic library supporter and a fantastic encouragement coach, who I am grateful to know. Kathrin Gabriel-Jones is joining us tonight for a talk designed specially for these challenging times. What does it mean to be okay? As Kathrin will discuss this evening, many of us are experiencing a difficult and unsettling time. The pandemic, social change, economic uncertainty, there are so many things and areas of concern. And Kathrin is going to talk to us a little bit about the fact that sometimes it's easier to answer the question, how are you, by just saying fine and moving along, even when that's not always the case. Kathrin Gabriel-Jones has 30 years of experience in education, ranging from working with physicians to preschools and teaching subjects that extend from medical compliance to playing well with others. Kathrin combines metaphor and imagery from pop culture, myth, urban legends, history, and world literature with humor to ignite each person's engagement in their own unique quest for hope and fulfillment. So enough out of me, and I am turning the podium over to Kathrin Gabriel-Jones. Thank you so much, Kathrin.
Thank you, Shane. I am so excited to see all of you here, and it's really good to be here with what a strange time in which we find ourselves as we feel these fingers of history close around us. This unprecedented time is unlike anything that any of us have ever experienced, and what stories we will get to tell. So, as Shane had said, our talk tonight is about that strange word, okay. Because how often, when someone asks us, how are we tempted to respond with, I'm okay, even if we're not sure what that means? So I asked somebody, what does that mean to just be okay? And the expression on their face spoke volumes of the uncertainty in which we find ourselves. So I thought we'd explore it a little bit. Before we go any further, I wanted to just engage in a quiet centering moment. And I'd love to invite you to join me in this opportunity during this crazy world to just have a little moment together. So during the entire course of the evening, there might be a number of times when I'll encourage or invite you to either speak aloud or to make a sound. I know that everyone is muted except for me. Haha, lucky you. But I invite you to engage in whatever kind of sounds and noises you would like to make. So this is a time that really is for you. So I invite you to gather and just have a moment of centering together as we are in this place that is in between what had been and what might yet become. So with your eyes open or your eyes closed, let's just have a moment in this time when the world feels unfamiliar, between what we did know and what we don't know yet, between what had been and what might be. We stand in a place of tension in this in-between time. We could call this time a waiting place. This waiting place challenges us by holding us still in a world that feels like it's moving too fast around us. This waiting place challenges us with all the possibilities that have been, the possibilities that could be, and those that might be. It is a place of not knowing what will come to pass, but also wondering what had been before. This is a place of not yet. In this silence, in this waiting place, notice your breath as you inhale through your nose. You exhale through your mouth. This waiting place is a place that all humans know. As we inhale and exhale, we each know this waiting place. We have each lived through this waiting place as we inhale and exhale. Each time we have been in this waiting place has been different. Each person experiences this waiting place in a slightly unique way. As we inhale and exhale, this waiting place has been a part of the human experience from time beyond measure. This waiting place will be a part of our human experience into years beyond count. This waiting place connects us all as we inhale and exhale. In this place together, I ask you, how are you? When you're ready, you're welcome to open your eyes. You can leave your video on or off, whatever makes you most comfortable. It's wonderful to have you here with me today. Thank you so much for coming. Okay. We may not even know what this means, this little tiny word that seems to be so small, so simple, it should be really easy to explain. So think of a time before the pandemic, those exactly 6 months ago, before March of 2020, long before we had ever entertained the possibility of this reality. What did okay mean? We might be able to think about a time like that, but now we feel the fingers of history closing around us. We are in this historic time, and the words that we use have all become renewed. So, okay, let's take a look at this word. Are you game taking a look at this word? All right, let's see. I didn't realize that there was such a thing as a loan word. I'd never heard of that phrase before. But okay is actually a loan word. A loan word is a word that is borrowed from another language, and it is placed into our language without translation. And it basically becomes this placeholder that stands in, almost a little bit like a mannequin upon which we can place whatever clothes we wish depending upon the situation at hand. The origins of okay are so broad and more expansive than I had imagined possible. They range from being documented historically in the early 1700s all the way to the mid 1900s. The origins include French, German, English, Finnish. There are even references to Native American languages and West African languages, not to mention Greek and Latin. The usages for all of these very different origins range between identifying politicians or political slogans, transactional verifications for shipping, as in, this is okay to ship, seals of approval or quality, military shorthand, and even use of propaganda. I encourage you for a delightful jaunt through history and wanderings through the rabbit holes of imagination. Pull up the origins of okay on Wikipedia. You're welcome. It's 8 pages of delight with links beyond compare. I didn't even want to get into all the different options because otherwise we'd be here until 2 in the morning, and I like you all way too much to subject you to that. So, given all of these different roots and origins of the term okay, what does it mean? It's ubiquitous in our language. It's sprinkled through our life like salt and pepper, spicing things up in some ways and in other ways overpowering us with this banality that we can't even see through. So I thought we could try something. What we could try is in the same way that we could look at a color wheel and see all of the different spectrums of the colors, I wanted to take a look at all the different spectrums of the word okay, just as a little tiny glimpse. Are you game? Cool. So there's the adjective, the descriptor. The sound on this recording is okay. That means it's good enough, right? It could be an adverb. Hey, you did okay the first time mountain biking. You didn't go head over heels. It could also be, yeah, you did okay mountain biking the first time. You only fell 3 or 4 times. There's also the agreement. Yeah, okay, I can do that. Or if you change the tone, okay, I suppose I can do that. Or even, okay, I'll do it. What a nuance. There's also the possibility of a straight up noun. My boss gave me the okay for this purchase, so I'm here to make that purchase. Or, Mom said it was okay. There's also the verb. Well, she already okayed it, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it right now. Or the other possibility is, yeah, but they okayed it for me. There's also another really cool phrase. So we've talked about the cool phrase of a loan word. Here's another very cool phrase. A versatile discourse marker, which basically just means, uh-huh, uh-huh. In a conversation or a dialogue that we're having with another person, occasionally we'll say the word, okay, uh-huh, okay. That is another way in which the word okay is used. Alrighty then. So we have all of this history. We have all of these different linguistic language uses. We have all of these colors on the wheel that explores how we use okay, how it shows up in our language, how like dandelions or clover or mint plants seem to travel and suddenly pop up and appear in the grass. Okay holds a lot of different meanings in a lot of different scenarios. But here's the thing. You are always you, no matter where you are. That means that the word okay for you is your word. It means something for you that you get to define and you get to discover. So how do we learn? How do we even explore that when we find ourselves in this COVID-19 reality, in this pandemic era, where we're adjusting to the reality or even the possibility that the world will not be the same? What does okay mean then? Well, I'd like to tell you a little story. I used to live in Minnesota, way out in the Midwest, nowhere near the ocean. And in Minnesota, in southwestern Minnesota, there is this river valley that's known as the Red River Valley. It's in the southwestern part of Minnesota. The Red River Valley floods annually. It doesn't just flood a little bit. It floods like the Nile floods. It floods like the water overtakes the fields. It floods 14, 15, 22 feet regularly, sweeping away cars and houses. It was a normal part of life. People built their communities around the Red River Valley. And so since they built themselves around the flooding, it was just a part of life because they had a high water mark. They had a framework in which they could live with, see, and understand their experience of the Red River Valley flooding every single year. Well, for a person who was not familiar with the flooding, and I just got to say, the Red River Valley was gorgeous. It had these pastoral hills, these green valleys. It was the kind of beauty that Mark Twain could only dream about. It was gorgeous. So there were a lot of people who moved into the Red River Valley because it was beautiful. Well, for a person who was not familiar with flooding, who didn't have a high water mark, and didn't have that frame of reference, well, the flooding was a really big deal. It was not okay. So there's that context of that shift. For the person who grew up in the Red River Valley, their okay meant something different from a person who was not from the Red River Valley. So before the pandemic, that's kind of the people who lived and grew up in the Red River Valley. We kind of had our watermarks, our own personal watermarks. We had our own frame of reference. We had the ways in which being okay and saying okay made sense, felt congruent with who we were, and supported how we lived our lives. Now we are in this new world. So, in order to have a sense of what okay means, we have to find our own personal dowsing rod, our own personal high watermark. And that may be something that each of us are able to do. But how do we engage in the use of the word okay with other people? So we have a little experiment. Do you remember at the beginning of our shared time together, I mentioned that there would be an opportunity when you would be able to engage your own voice. This is kind of an experiment that we're going to engage in. This experiment is all about imagining, speaking, and noticing. So I invite you, if you wish, to let your own voice be heard by your ears. How remarkable our own voices are to our ears, and how surprising it can be to ourselves. This exercise goes like this. I'll invite you to imagine or reflect, think about a time when, and I'll describe the scenario or the situation. That could be something recent. It could be something from the past. But I invite you to imagine it, picture it, remember it. Then, while you're holding that in your mind, say out loud, I'm okay. And when you say those words, notice what you feel in your physical form. Notice what happens through your imagination. Notice if anything happens in your emotions, your thoughts. Are you game? Cool. So, all of this is in the context of this high watermark and your own personal reference. So, imagine or think about, remember, or reflect on a time when life felt overwhelming. It felt frustrating. There was unknown that surrounded you. And somehow you had to make sense of it. You had to keep going, even though you weren't sure what was happening. For instance, April 2020. Think about that time and just let that circumstance rest in your mind. Notice any emotions that come up, the memories. And with that reflection, with that imagining in your experience, say out loud, I'm okay. Now try it in a different tone. What do you notice? Does anything happen in your emotions? Any thoughts scamper through your head? Any lightning bolts in your imagination? Winds that blow through your physical form? Now let's try a different tact. Think about, remember, or reflect a time when you felt great. You felt happy. Something had not only gone your way, the sun was shining and the temperature was perfect. The wind was soft and gentle, and it was awesome. Now, out loud, say, I'm okay. What do you notice in your physical form, your emotions? Any winds blow through your thoughts? The word okay, because it is such a presence with us, it is so ubiquitous in our life. It becomes the word that we can lean on when we're not sure what else to say. The phrase, I'm okay, in a work setting may be completely different than in the grocery store or outside a coffee shop, or when one is experiencing physical pain and isn't sure they want to share it. It becomes the word that is a chameleon that changes through our life, and our noticing becomes that empowering, revolutionary way back to ourself. Because the word okay can become yours. And here's how. If we know what the word okay and what the experience of okay means to us, then we can have the opportunity to identify and know when we're not okay. And sometimes we're not okay. And you know what? That's important. That matters. Because even as the sun warms the ground in order to help the plants grow, we need to have our own awareness to shine down on our experience so we know when to tend ourselves. So the words that we use, the I'm okay, the okay, the well, this was okayed, so I'm going to go ahead and do this, the okay, each becomes something that we can identify who it serves. Is it serving us? Is it serving the other person? Is it serving the relationship that's growing in between us? How do we use, how does this word, okay, this experience show up in our life? We can identify that sometimes by noticing when the word appears in our language and in our, well, when it shows up from our mouth. And sometimes words matter to us in ways that we don't really realize. Since I've begun reflecting on this word, okay, that word has become something that matters to me. It has become this precious way that I can exchange an experience with another person because this word means something, and it means something as much as how radical this could be. I love you. You're wonderful. And thank you. Because now in this time when the world has changed, and as we feel these fingers of history curling around us, we have the opportunity to not only re-examine how we live in our lives, but also how we embrace this space in between us. Because we will get through and beyond this pandemic. We will be able to leave this waiting place. We will not be here forever. And we have the opportunity to be okay, because it's gonna be okay. So all of these becomes a way to us, well, to who we are. Because not only do we get to discover what okay means for each of us individually, but we also get to know and understand how we use the phrase, how are you? And that brings me to the end of my presentation. We had not prepared a time for a question and answer because this was kind of a wonderful exploration and playing around in the sand pit of language and kind of exploring things together. But I do want to at least extend a chat opportunity in case anyone has sent Shane a note. And that's the word from the man on the street. So back to you, Shane. How's the weather looking these days?
This was great, Kathrin. Thank you so much. If anybody has a comment or a question, as Kathrin said, you can type it into the chat box here, and I will share that with her. And I would like to thank you for taking the time to design this talk for us. It was very beneficial to me, and I'm sure to the others as well. Kathrin, would you mind telling us all, because I did put this in the press release, you are an encouragement coach. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think it sounds like a pretty wonderful thing.
I sure can. I am an encouragement coach because my training as a coach has led me to the recognition that the person who really has the expertise in their life is you. And I believe in the inherent dignity and nobility in each person, and that regardless of what may be present in a person's pathway, obstacles in their road or clogs in their pipes, each person, because they have the answers within themselves and within their own experience of faith and life and well, the road of life, people need sometimes just an encouragement to remind them that your answers are within. And sometimes all we need is someone from the outside to just say, I really liked the way that you said that, and to reflect what they've said back to them so that their own wisdom can be heard by them. And in that way, discover the hero that's already there, their own white knight, their own Xena, the warrior princess, there to rescue them. And that's why I do what I do as an encouragement coach.
Thank you so much. We do have a comment from the audience. Never thought about this, but if we respond that we are not okay to a person who asks, how are you? It opens up the possibility for more valuable exchange.
Yes. Oh, yes, exactly. And how wonderful. And what a rebellious reclamation from that attitude that to respond in any way other than I'm okay is rude, rather than entertaining that it's an invitation into a deeper possibility of connection and relationship, even when everything has hit the fan. Thank you.
Okay, we have another question from the audience. Kathrin, could you please tell us more about how you work with people? Thank you.
I work with people through, well, now I work with people through Zoom. I work with people primarily through conversation and metaphor. I am a big believer that each person walks along their roads of life, and the landscape, their internal landscape, can be their greatest help. And so the way that I work with people is through conversation and eventually, possibly through groups. Good heavens, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to all be in the same room together? But I have conversations with them about what the nugget that they're wondering about, and tease out the metaphors that may be that that come up through our conversation to allow my client to entertain the possibility of drawing the map of their own landscape, discovering the parts of their own lives that they may have walled off, maybe even entertaining those aspects of their lives that they had always judged as not being helpful, that really may actually be the greatest gold mine in their entire landscape. A little bit like if you've ever seen the movie The Princess Bride, discovering that the fire swamp is actually, truly, the greatest and most beautiful part of your landscape. So, as Shane had mentioned, I engage with metaphor and with literature and mythology and faith and theology, and I really take a lot of this synthesis and put it all together. People can contact me through my website. They can also find me on Facebook. And oddly enough, I am the only Kathrin Gabriel-Jones in the entire world. Who knew? And so I hope that's helpful.
Excellent. Do we have any final questions for Kathrin before we close out the evening here? I want to thank you on behalf of Rockland Public Library, Kathrin, for speaking to us this evening. And thank you all for coming out for the talk. If you know somebody who was hoping to see it but couldn't make it tonight, we will try to have the video posted on the Rockland Public Library Facebook page and YouTube channel sometime early next week. Next week, we will have an evening of music and conversation with Forget, and in 2 weeks, we will welcome the Society for Creative Anachronism for a 10th century recreation. If you are interested in those programs, you can send me an email at sbillings@rocklandmaine.gov. I'm thrilled that we were able to host Kathrin Gabriel-Jones. Thank you again, and thanks to all of you for coming. I wish you a wonderful evening. Take good care.
Bye, everybody.